Hi everybody, it is October 17, 2019. I'm going to start with information regarding these climate change nutcases, the fraud of climate change, and then I'm going to get into the earthquakes and the potential earthquake that may be coming to California. The nor'easter, the crazy mainstream media reporting, unbelievably dramatic. Other storms, like what's happening in Washington, and a few more, bits of information that is, well, important. But I do want to start here. These climate change nutcases are out of control. This is in London. So I'm sure you know that the climate change protesters are disrupting travel at airports because they don't think that people should fly. Well, I'm going to be posting a video on the climate change alarmists' hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is glaring, right smack in your face, and I don't understand why we're not hearing the outrage over this hypocrisy as loudly as we hear and see these climate change protesters that are just bona fide nutcases. Now, when you think that this climate change, global warming, hysteria, its foundation is a lie, it is, well, a great fraud perpetrated on the world's people. That's what it is. All you have to do is do a little bit of research to find that out. That's all you have to do. And when everything gets so obvious, and the evidence that the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, out of the United Nations, that's the panel that makes up the 97% of climate scientists who agree that man is causing global warming, a lie. Everything's a lie. But when it gets so obvious and people still want to believe the lie over checking out the truth, well, that's when society breaks down. When everything is just a lie. And the people in that society just go along with the lie. Yeah, things really get pretty crazy. I think maybe we're witnessing the crazy, and guess what? The crazy is only going to get crazier. So, London, here. Trains, I guess, no good.
Get him off! Hey! Hey, get him off!
Well, they deserve it. Look, the lunatics are out in force, and they are causing a lot of disruption and inconvenience to people. And, when you know that this is all based on a lie, you do get very angry at these people. Well, let's listen to a little bit of this dialogue.
How did you walk here from your home? Did you walk here? No. How did you get there?
No. It's a clear
How
answer. How did you get here? I know. Obviously by a train, by a bus.
You were on a train to this session.
You're
You
not
are
walking.
protesting against what?
Exactly.
Oh my. Listen, if you're a hypocrite.
So, When I see people getting shamed or they're embarrassed or whatever, there is a part of me that, I feel bad, but this is deserved. It's deserved. But what I would love to hear is somebody screaming, why don't you do some research on that IPCC? Do the research to find out that climate change, global warming, the whole ball of wax is just a complete and utter lie. So, I'm sure you've seen this.
We only have a few months left. I love that you support the Green Deal, but it's not getting rid of fossil fuel. It's not going to solve the problem fast enough. A Swedish professor saying, we can eat dead people, but that's not fast enough. So I think your next campaign slogan has to be this: we got to start eating babies. We don't have enough time. There's too much CO2. All of you, you're a pollutant. Too much CO2. We have to start now, please. You are so great. I'm so happy that you're really supporting the Green Deal, but it's not enough. Even if we would bomb Russia, we still have too many people, too much pollution. So we have to get rid of the babies. That's a big problem. Just stopping having babies is not enough. We need to eat the babies, and this is very serious. Please give a response.
Thank you. We'll go ahead.
Okay.
No, we'll go ahead. It's so no. Yeah, no. Thank you. So I think so one of the things that's very important to us is that we need to treat the climate crisis with the urgency that it does present. Luckily, we have more than a few months.
Oh my God. Another nutcase, this woman. I've been thinking about that woman. I think she did this purposely. I really do. I think she did it to, accentuate the craziness of the climate change liars. I think she did it. The barrettes in the hair, it looks a little, like she's definitely not quite there. I have a funny feeling she is there. And she did it to put in their face that they are unbelievable nut jobs. Now, what she said about those scientists who were saying that we need to eat dead people, well, yeah, scientists are saying that. Researchers, academics, yep. We've got to eat maggots and insects. So if that's the case, I have to hand it to her because this has gone viral, I'm sure you know. But for this woman to be saying what she is saying, and she ain't any expert, she is the new face of the United Nations to push the climate change hysteria, to come out and say we only have 12 years, so we've got to get this Green New Deal passed. That's her job. That's what she's getting paid for. And it's so shocking to see how many people actually support her when she is talking lies. That's our problem. Our fellow Americans, I'm not going to stop saying it, global warming fraud exposed in pictures. Now, when we do have all the evidence, we've had evidence for years and years and years, more evidence comes in, it becomes very clear that the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change out of the United Nations, is just a panel of policymakers to push Agenda 2030. Yes, the elite are definitely taking over the world. We will have one world government. The United Nations will be the governing body of the world. And they are enslaving all of the world's people. They're depopulating. You know, for those, I always have in the back of my mind, my ex-liberal progressive Democrat friends, who think that they're the educated elite. They have all of these degrees and they're so smart. And they're stupid. They're stupid. Because they will not look into the fraud coming out of the IPCC. They will not look into, they will not do the research. How can you consider yourself to be so intelligent when you will not do research? Well, here, just a few minutes of this wonderful video. I will link to everything below. I hope that you watch the full video and circulate it, circulate it, circulate it. It makes it very clear, it's very simple, that the IPCC has been lying. Just another person putting out the evidence of the lies. What's hard is we all have to suffer the consequences of the people who believe the lies. We have to suffer their consequences. We have to suffer their just wanting to believe a lie. We have to suffer living through, these people continually. And it's very hard to get away from, these AOC types. And people have to suffer the inconvenience, the disruption, and then we have to suffer being called a conspiracy theorist. And we're the nut jobs? Really? When we've done the research, we still have the ability to critically think. We have, weighed the evidence and we've come to a conclusion. That's being a nutcase? Yes. Using your brain today is somehow, well, you're shamed. You're just a crazy person if you use your brain. That's where we're at. That's, well, when you have lying people who just accept lies after lies after lies after lies, everything breaks down.
Science.com, setting the record straight about climate. It's not an easy job committing fraud on the scale which climate alarmists are, so I thought I'd give them some assistance. I've developed some new software which will give them a boost in identifying which critical data they should be hiding. But first, there's some important news out of Washington, D.C. They've identified a panel of experts who will be setting our nation's climate policy. Apparently, the Democrats felt they needed people who were better educated than AOC or Greta. Now let's review the problem which my software will help climate alarmists solve. This is the main page from the part of the National Climate Assessment which went out to journalists and policymakers. This page contains a lot of graphics. Here's one which shows heat waves increasing since 1960. Here's another one which shows Arctic sea ice declining since 1979. And another one which shows wildfires increasing since 1983. And one more which shows sea level rising since 1920. So we have one graph which starts in 1960, another which starts in 1979, another which starts in 1920, and one more which starts in 1983. When you want to mislead people with statistics, picking your start date is very important. First, let's look at the heat wave graph which starts in 1960. They carefully picked a period during the global cooling scare to start their graph so that they could show heat waves increasing over time. And here's the underlying data from the part of the National Climate Assessment which didn't go out to journalists and politicians. This graph is warm spells days, this one is heat wave magnitude, and this one is warmest temperature of the year. As you can see, summers were much hotter in the United States prior to 1960. So by hiding all the data before 1960, they were able to show a little bit of an upwards trend. I overlaid the part of the graph which went out to policymakers over here in this corner on top of the underlying data, and you can see exactly what they did. The red bars are what policymakers saw, and the extreme heat prior to 1960 is what they didn't see. People may consider this sort of behavior to be shocking, but it's actually standard operating procedure for climate alarmists. This graph shows in pink all the data that was hidden from journalists and policymakers. This next graph is the one which shows wildfires increasing in the U.S. since 1983. And this graph of U.S. forest fires from the U.S. Forest Service is the one which didn't go out to journalists and politicians. And you can see why they hid all the data before 1983, because there was a lot more burn acreage in the United States prior to 1983. Burn acreage in the U.S. is down about 80% since the 1930s. This shouldn't be surprising to anyone because it was very hot and dry during the 1930s. Fires are associated with heat and droughts. There's very close correlation between heat waves and burn acreage. This next graphic overlays the graph which went out to journalists and policymakers over here on top of the data which didn't go out to journalists and policymakers. You can see the breathtaking fraud which is going on here. They carefully cherry-picked 1 year where they could show an increasing trend in wildfires, even though U.S. wildfires are down 80%. And this graph shows in pink all the data that was hidden. Now let's look at the Arctic sea ice extent graph, which starts in 1979. Starting in 1979 makes it look like sea ice extent is decreasing linearly. And now let's look at the data which is being hidden. This graph is from the 1990 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report. It shows Arctic sea ice extent all the way back to the early 1970s. And as you can see, extent was much lower prior to 1979. In 1979 was the peak. The data was taken from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And here's the accompanying text from the 1990 IPCC report. Satellite observations have been used to map sea ice extent routinely since the early 1970s. The American Navy Joint Ice Center has produced weekly charts which have been digitized by NOAA. And down here is the key sentence. In 1972 to 1975, sea ice extent was significantly less. So they hid the data before 1979 and tried to use the excuse that we didn't have satellite data prior to 1979. But the IPCC report said the exact opposite.
Okay, so I will link below. And yes, please circulate this. I do think that a lot of people have this idea because they're not connecting the dots. They don't get why would they lie? Why would they lie? Because they're using this to implement policies that will take control of every aspect of your life. It's hard to imagine that there are people in the world who actually want to control every aspect of everyone's life that's left on this planet, put them into these smart cities so they can be watched and listened to 24 hours a day. Yeah, it's hard to imagine, but when you don't do the research, then all you do is buy into the lie, and then we all have to suffer the consequences of that. Yeah, there are nutcases in the world. And unfortunately, those nutcases are just exploding all over the place. When life is based on a lie, yeah, life becomes very crazy, insane. That's why the truth is really important. And that's why it's really important for everybody to do the research, to get to the truth. And then what could happen is that maybe
one of the things that's very
people
important to
will
us within a few months
pull this woman out of that building in Washington, D.C., pull her out, get rid of her, get rid of the lying nutcases that we have all over. The people with no integrity. The people who will do anything for money. And that's what this woman is all about. That's what she is all about. And if people can't see that, if they actually think what this woman is talking about, like she knows, she's given a script, just like Obama, to read and to promote the United Nations, IPCC, those policies. It's an intergovernmental panel, not an interscientific panel. Intergovernmental panel. That's what they're there to do. To write policy for governments around the world to implement. And it's all about implementing Agenda 2030. So, yeah. So now, what do we have? A white page. An unprecedented movement detected on California earthquake fault capable of an 8 temblor. Is that an 8 earthquake? Why can't they just say earthquake? Okay. So, a major California fault capable of producing a magnitude 8 earthquake has begun, moving for the first time on record, a result of this year's Ridge Crest earthquake sequence, destabilizing nearby faults. Satellite radar images now show that the fault has started to move, causing a bulging of land that can be viewed from space. This is surprising because we've never seen the Garlock fault do anything. Here, all of a sudden, it changed its behavior. We don't know what it means. What do you mean you don't know what it means? You just said that, well, this movement could create a earthquake, an 8.0 earthquake. Okay, you don't know what it means. Fine. Not only has the Garlock fault begun to creep in one section, but there's also been a substantial swarm of small earthquakes in another section of the fault and 2 additional clusters of earthquakes elsewhere, one south of Owens Lake and the other in the Panamint Valley, just west of Death Valley. Now they're saying a creeping fault triggered by a nearby quake doesn't necessarily mean a big quake is coming, but what's unusual now is that the Garlock Fault has been seismically quiet in the historical record until now. And while it's unclear what the creeping and aftershocks might mean for the near future, the newly recorded movement highlights how much of a potential risk of the Garlock Fault, fault is to California should it rupture. Now, a large quake on the Garlock Fault has the potential to send strong shaking to the San Fernando Valley, Santa Clarita, Lancaster, Palmdale, Ventura, Oxnard, Bakersfield, and Kern County, one of the nation's most productive regions for agriculture and oil. And the military installations, Edwards Air Force Base, Naval Air Weapons Station, China Lake, Fort Irwin National Training Center. The fault is crossed by 2 of Southern California's most important supplies of imported water, California and Los Angeles aqueducts, critical roads like Interstate 5, State Routes 1458, US 395. So, if a major quake on the Garlock Fault happens, it could destabilize the San Andreas Fault. Well, okay. It's getting a little worse, but they don't know if it's actually going to happen. So, you guys might want to move. So I will link below. This is a very long article, but it goes back and forth to maybe, but we don't know. Well, there is a line of potentially ripening fault zones along the so-called Eastern California shear zone. So it's not just the Garlock fault. There is also reason to focus on risks from other nearby faults. Well, have I been showing you those fabulous, extremely low frequencies being set off pretty much 24/7, Southern California, right into this area? But no, we're not going to look at that. No. And of course, we've had earthquake swarms in, well, unusual areas: Texas, Oklahoma, San Francisco, the new Madrid fault zone. That's Texas and Oklahoma is unusual, but there's a whole lot of shaking going on in America right now, and many people are concerned about what that could potentially mean. Could it be possible that the U.S. is entering a more seismically active time? Yeah, but it's induced by man using very powerful pulses of extremely low frequencies that cause earthquakes. Whole lot of studies out there. Why don't you look into that? You know, I like Michael Schneider, but that he has never talked about weather modification or geoengineering, as far as I know, that is what I am not liking. And articles, you know, years ago that I would read, you know, he would talk about prophecy and all of these weather events. You know, it was all, well, prophesized in the Bible, but no mention of it being induced by man deliberately to destroy not just our country, but countries around the world. And it's also to implement Agenda 2030, you know, get people out of certain areas, to get them into smart cities, get them out of their cars so that they're using public transportation. Well, all right, so this week alone, and this was posted October 1st, this week alone, earthquake swarms, Texas, Oklahoma, San Francisco, New Madrid fault line. To see so many earthquake swarms happen in such diverse places with such a within such a compressed period of time is definitely unusual. Well, what I posted a lot on these extremely low frequencies, Doppler radar, pulsing those frequencies in these areas. I find it very interesting that could it be that no one has ever mentioned this to Michael Schneider? I think it's those that mentality that says, well, this is a fringe topic, so I'm not going to go there. I'll lose readers. I don't know. But what is this about? What makes this even more unusual is the fact that Rosh Hashanah just ended. In fact, the earthquake swarm that we witnessed in Texas started on Rosh Hashanah. Why? I read the entire article. No mention of why. So does that have something to do with the Bible? I don't know. All right, so you can read this about all of the, wow, a whole lot, like Oklahoma. Is this Oklahoma? Yes. In a 24-hour period, the state experienced 9 earthquakes, at least a magnitude of 1.5, over 7-day period, 40 such earthquakes. Well, you had an awful lot of blasting of those frequencies. All right. Yes, the unusual seismic activity along the California coast. 5. moderate earthquakes in the San Francisco area. Oklahoma it's had more than 1,000 earthquakes this year. Wow. Well, you also had an awful lot of weather modification going on to bring about all of those floods. I can't stand it. I can't stand it when everything becomes so obvious and people just ignore the obvious. It drives me nuts. It always has. But this is getting really very, very dangerous. The ignoring of the obvious, ignoring all of what our military is doing, ignoring all of the evidence that, well, connects all the dots and explains all the, well, these crazy nut jobs. So, okay, the nor'easter, because this is going on, you can watch, this news reporter is sitting there dramatically talking about the rains while, all right, just a few minutes, watch it.
Brent and Jen, good evening to you both. Wow, what a big difference we were seeing compared to when we first got to New London earlier this evening compared to what we're looking at now. I want to first talk about what I saw when I first got to New London. We were just seeing small pockets of rain. Roads were still pretty dry, but I'd say around 8 o'clock is when the storm really started to pick up. Let me switch the camera here just to give you a live look of what it's looking like out here. You're actually seeing this wind blowing this rain on the ground across the road. That's how heavy the winds out here. We're also seeing some heavy rain. Not exactly the type of weather you really want to be in tonight. So if you don't have...
All right. Are you seeing a rain that is as dramatic as that woman just described it? I'm not. Okay.
To go anywhere tonight, definitely stay inside until this storm passes through. We also spoke to a couple people who are still out and about in this weather just to see how they are handling all of this rain. New London, the city that is no stranger to flooding when it comes to weather like this. Heavy rain, strong gusty winds, and large puddles, the type of weather...
Potholes that are filling with water. Oh, Connecticut, high taxes. What are they doing? Are they repairing your roads? That's what you're paying taxes for. Well, it doesn't look like your roads are getting repaired in New London.
That just makes you want to stay inside.
It's New England. We're used to it every year. Rain is rain, snow is snow. Just go about your average, daily stuff.
Stop.
All right. So, nor'easter threatened 60 million people. And this news reporter is dramatically talking about a rain event as if it's the kind of rain that, well, you need to shelter in place. Is there something wrong here? It's gaslighting. It's gaslighting on a scale that, well, is unprecedented. It's gaslighting. So this is a major storm, and you see people, well, they're walking fine, and, well, this is New England, and, we just, you deal with it. We're being gaslighted. But when you see this over and over and over again, you begin to doubt your own reality. Like, okay, so you see some rain. There's no flood here in the parking lot. We've seen massive flash flooding where people are losing their lives, but they seem to be reporting on this nor'easter as if it's that. And I got a lot of comments from you guys. Thank you for leaving the comments about what was happening in your area, and, well, it didn't seem as if it was really what mainstream media was reporting it as. Why do Americans put up with this? All right, so here, I do know, and based on some of the comments that I got, there were periods of really high winds. And based on the comments, a whole lot of you were sensing that it felt not natural, that it was weather modified. The winds didn't feel like anything that you were used to. So now there's massive power outages. Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, New York, Maine, Massachusetts. This was at 11 a.m. There's still a whole lot of power outages. Massachusetts and Maine got the worst of it. Both had nearly 250,000 without power. And, you know, I think that they're turning power off. You know, this is a power outage map that, well, here. So apparently 10,170 are still without power in New York. Connecticut, 19,712. Massachusetts, 109. Here, no outage event, but 9,000 in New Hampshire in the no outage event. Vermont, close to 3,000, and Maine, 134,920. All right, I don't know, you know, this map thing, but a whole lot of power outages. And that's essentially, you know, the worst of the damage is the power outages. Of course, I'm sure trees are down and, well, power lines down, causing the power outages. But look at the tree. Look at the tree. It's green. It's covered with fungal disease. Look how rotten it is. You know, so people aren't even paying attention to what is obvious. What is obvious? So, Florida getting a tropical storm warning as next depression close to formation. Wow, that's a forecast I've never heard before. It's close to formation. If it forms, it will be Tropical Storm Nestor. It's in the Gulf of Mexico, and it has a 90% chance of becoming a tropical depression within the next 48 hours. And wow, it looks like Christmas. It looks like Christmas lighting up. This is your tropical depression right here. Wow, okay. Well, it looks a little weird. And it sure does have an awful lot of frequencies blasting away right near it. What do you think, guys? It looks a little strange, to say the least. Look at this. It's like it looks like a pulsating frequency itself. But look at all of these frequencies blasting away right along the coast. Look at Florida. You are lit up as well. Well, we're all lit up down here. And yeah, it does seem these are the states that get blasted every night, pretty much. Oh, look at this nor'easter. You know, it hasn't really moved. It just, I guess, evaporated, and it has a few bands to evaporate still. This is a joke. It's a joke. It's a dangerous joke. You know, people suffer the consequences of this joke, but it's like a bloomin' joke. And I can't believe that people are not getting it. They don't want to get it. Maybe it'll mean that they'll have to do something. Look at this. Well, look, you know, Washington. Oh, by the way, the Florida, yeah. And also other states, Mississippi, Alabama border, Louisiana, Grand Isle. So, life-threatening storm, and it's going to form within 48 hours, and it doesn't look anything like a tropical depression or well, nothing has to look like, you know, it doesn't have to look like a hurricane. It doesn't have to look like a northeaster. It doesn't have to, you know, now they just make things up because Americans just don't think anymore. They can say anything and it doesn't matter. Family's basement fills with 5 inches of animal blood. Yeah. 5 inches of blood, fat, and other animal tissue flooding a family's basement in Bagley, Ohio. Des Moines. Is it Ohio? Carol. Okay, just, well, that's my brain. Nobody wants to see that, smell that. I wouldn't want that for anybody in their house. Well, yeah. The waste coming from a neighboring meat locker where blood and tissue from slaughtered animals was washed down a drain. Officials say a clog or a break in the pipe sent the waste into the Lestina's basement through a floor drain. They had to temporarily move in with a relative, but this company, this meat locker, has not been cooperative. They haven't reached out to us at all. In fact, they haven't taken any accountability for it. They just say it's not their fault, and I guess told me good luck, best of luck. If I want to do anything with it, it's on my dime and my schedule. Okay. Well, when you've lived in the country of the lie, and the lies just become more and more outrageous, and more people just accept it, don't hold anybody accountable for anything, then that's what you get. You get, not our fault, when it is their fault, and best of luck to you. You do whatever the hell you want. We're not going to claim responsibility. Oh my God. Okay. Well, thousands of bags of radioactive Fukushima waste swept away. Yeah, the typhoon in Japan. Okay, great. But don't worry, because the Japanese authorities have said, no problem. Each bag held up to 1 ton of contaminated soil and vegetation from the Fukushima site. They were swept away from a storage site in Tamura. Swept away, 1 ton? All right. Well, it's no problem. It's no problem at all, because the authorities have said it's no problem. 10,000 homes were flooded, 74 deaths, 14 people still missing from the typhoon, and I think that those numbers are low. I also want to show you something here. Climate change tax for dining out. California residents add 1% fee to the bill. They're taxing any which way they can to bring in the money to build those smart cities and to get you out of the areas they don't want you in. Well, the documents did say the people will pay. The people will pay for the reshaping of the world and the building of smart cities. But this was May 1, 2019. May 1, 2019. And Jerry Brown was still in office? May 1? When did Newsom take office? All right, well, it's the Restore California Renewable Restaurant Program, adding 1% to the bill. And restaurants aren't happy about it. Customers aren't happy about it. There's a new seismic phenomena. Yeah, okay, ready for this? Wow, what's this? Oh, it looks like a hurricane. Oh, my God, what is it? New seismic phenomenon discovered, named Stormquakes. Curious burst of energy, born from massive storms. It can radiate thousands of miles across continents. Unknown seismic phenomenon that they have dubbed stormquakes. These events described this week in geophysical research letters. They're pulses of seismic waves birthed from the ferocious energy in massive storms, and they can radiate thousands of miles across continents. Yeah, okay. Well, the new study, the team identified a discrete burst of wiggles from each stormquake that they can trace back to the origin offshore. It's a lengthy jumble of rumbles. Guess what? Electromagnetic frequencies that man is using to create these storms. And that is what's causing the stormquakes. My God. All right. I also just want to show you. This is from a subscriber who sent me this capture from Google Earth. This is right off the coast of Portland, Maine. And, you know, I have been seeing on radar these like triangles or what look like squares in the pulsating Doppler radar. So, yeah, I wish I knew what this site was, but if anybody has any information, this is right off the coast of Portland, Maine. And if you do have any information, I would really like to learn more about it. They are transmitters. Yeah, they've got an awful lot of tools. So it's not just one thing like a Doppler radar station or its HARP facilities. No, they have so many transmitter sites, so many antennas, so many different radars, and unfortunately, it's killing life. It's killing life. It's killing life. All links are below.